Okay, so let's begin IELTS live listening. Please leave a comment. Let me check your comment. How do you usually prepare for the IELTS listening section? And what does your teacher teach you? Okay, I am here. Hello, nice. Okay, please respond to my questions. Okay, you have to give adequate response if you want to be eligible for the prizes. Okay, so let's take a look. IELTS live listening. First, let's go over the test structures really quickly. As you can see, the listening is the first part that you will go through when you are taking the test. How long is the IELTS listening section? It's 40 minutes long, but you will have 30 minutes to listen to the recordings and also to write down your answers. And then you have 10 minutes to transfer your answers onto an answer sheet. And I provided the link below. I suggest you use this answer sheet when you are practicing, when you are taking a mock test, so you'll get used to this format, and it will reduce test anxiety when you are taking the actual exam. Okay, so you can read this for yourself. There are a total of 4 sections and 40 questions. And we'll go over the sections later. And the purpose of the IELTS test, other than to torture you, is designed to assess how well you understand the main ideas in specific and factual information, recognize the opinions, attitudes, and the purpose of a speaker, and follow the development of an argument. So yes, basically, it's designed to torture you. Okay, so no, it's designed to assess your language abilities. Of course, it's not designed to torture you, although many of you may feel that way. Okay, so let's talk about the timing. As I mentioned earlier, it takes approximately 30 minutes, and you are allowed an extra 10 minutes to transfer your answer from your question booklet to your answer sheet. Is it possible for you to memorize what was said earlier and then try to figure out the response? Very unlikely. However, if you did write some incomplete responses, you will have time to complete those answers. Okay, question types. There are a variety of question types. I believe most books say there are around 10 question types, but I listed some over here. I will also provide a link below in the description later on that shows you all the question types. But as you know from my reading live stream, my emphasis and my focus for this class is not to prepare you for the question types, even though I do feel that you should go over the question types by yourself. But I want to go over some general listening strategies that you may not be aware of. So you can go over this section by yourself. So let's look at the format and the topics. Okay, so we have 4 sections for the IELTS listening module. Section 1, a conversation on an everyday topic. How many speakers do we have for this section? At least on the audio recording, how many speakers do we have? Well, you see a conversation, right? It's pretty difficult to carry on a conversation by yourself. So typically 2 speakers. And for section 2, you see a monologue on an everyday topic. But let's go back to section 1 very quickly. What kind of topics does section 1 typically cover? What kind of listening do you usually encounter in section 1? You usually encounter phone conversations. For example, if you were to book a trip, if someone was to book a trip, if someone were to book a seat at a restaurant. So typically, detailed information will be provided in this type of listening task. Typically, people will give their name, dates, and other specific information. And it's fairly easy for most IELTS test candidate to handle because you will be familiar with most of these words and phrases that they use in this section. So it serves as sort of a warm-up for the other sections. Of course, you will be graded on your performance in this section, but typically the conversation is an everyday topic and it's fairly easy to handle. Okay, so we can move on to section 2, a monologue on an everyday topic. And this is usually just one person, perhaps a tour guide, talking about a historic monument. So one person talking and you just have to write down the information. You don't have to take notes if you don't want to, but you do have to jot down the information that they provide. Or it can be someone talking about a company for an extended period of time. Okay, so section 3 is a discussion on an academic topic, and section 4 is a talk on an academic topic. For section 3, you may encounter 3 to 4 speakers. So it becomes a bit difficult because you have to separate the different ideas. And if you're not used to engaging or listening to discussions on academic topics, it may become a little difficult for you to jot down all the information. And section 4 is a talk, usually, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes on an academic topic. And this is what students usually have the most difficulty on. Okay, so these 2 sections are more difficult for students. And I will give you some general tips to help you overcome these difficulties. So let me check the comments really quickly, and then we can resume with our course. Okay, so let me check your comments. Okay, so before we begin and before I give you some tips, I want you to write down your problems. So what problems do you encounter in the IELTS listening section? So the question types are listed here. You can check the handout online later, but let's go over some problems that I have written for you. And I didn't come up with these problems. I actually went to my IELTS group that I moderate, and I asked all the members in the group to write down problems that they have with IELTS listening. And these are the most common problems that they have. So let me read them to you really quickly, and we'll figure out how to overcome these problems. The speed is too fast. I do not have enough time to write everything down. I do not understand the accent. Okay, this is a big complaint for many test candidates. I'm not familiar with the way they speak. Is it related to accent or is it something else? Okay, I'm not familiar with certain question types, example, maps. Okay, I'm not sure about the spelling of certain words. So what problems do you have with the IELTS listening section? Please write down your response in the comments section. Tell me which one of these problems do you have. And what are some tips to solve these problems? Well, let's go over the problems first. The speed is too fast. How do we even handle this problem? Because we're not accustomed to hearing native speakers speak really quickly. And even when I'm giving you this lecture right now, I'm actually slowing my speech down so it becomes easier for you to understand. I guess this is a problem for most teachers because we're used to teaching second language learners, and we typically slow down our speech to make it easier for you to understand. But native speakers don't talk like this, and sometimes you're caught unprepared for the speed. So what exactly should you do? Of course, you can say to practice all the time, but I think I can give you more detailed tips. Okay, well, the speed is too fast for a variety of reasons. The first reason that listening is actually a conscious effort for you, for non-native speakers. For native speakers, comprehension of listening is essentially automatic. They hear the sounds and they automatically transfer it to meaningful words or meaningful phrases, depending on the word, the phrase, and also the context. But for non-native speakers, especially beginning non-native speakers, they have to make a very conscious effort and use a variety of testing strategies to help them bridge this gap between themselves and the abilities of a native speaker. So it's not so easy for us to automatically listen and just get meaning out of the listening. This doesn't really address how you solve this problem, but at least it explains to you why you are having difficulty understanding the listening. I do not have enough time. How do you solve this problem? It's actually related, right? You don't have enough time to write down responses because the speed is too fast. And I do not understand the accent because many of us in Taiwan, we are familiar with American accents, North American accents. So we're not really used to the Australian or the British accent. I'm not familiar with the way they speak. This is related to accent, but also it's related to perhaps the words and phrases. For example, in the US, we may say truck, but in the UK, they may say lorry. And I think one that was quite difficult for me is in the US, we say transportation, but in the UK, they say transport. And in the US, transport is typically used as a verb and not as a noun. So that was kind of confusing for me when I took the test. Even modes of transport, we typically say kinds of transportation or forms of transportation in the US. So there are certain phrases and words that you need to be aware of. You can easily find a comparison between the two types of English online by just typing the differences between American and British English, or the different words between American and British English, and Google will have a bunch of lists, and you can just click and memorize these words and phrases. However, it's not only related to words and phrases. Sometimes not the syntax, but sometimes the way that they structure their speech perhaps is spoken in a way that you are not familiar with. Let me give you an example to clarify my point. For example, we typically learn in the classroom, what's your name? And we answer and we write down our names. But in real life situations, perhaps they will not ask you, what's your name? Perhaps you are filling out a form and they will say, oh, I can't see your initials. I can't see your name. Can you write that down for me again? So you're so accustomed to listening to what's your name and then writing down the information that you are unfamiliar with other types or other ways of asking this question. So what you have to do here is you have to get used to paraphrasing certain information. So when you are doing the listening practice tests and you are just practicing in general, I highly recommend that you read the script. So if there's something you don't understand, it's not that you don't understand the word or the phrase, you're just not used to this rephrasing of the information. So I highly suggest you to read a listening script after you take the listening test. And the listening script is always available for you if you use official material. As you can see from this IELTS mock test, all the script is included. Okay, so question types. Yeah, I definitely recommend you go over the question types too. Not sure about the spelling. Well, okay, this is a difficult one. And the reason why I'm not addressing every single one of these problems is because the answer is below. But I just have to get through this one first. Okay, so I got ahead of myself and started to tell you how to solve this problem. But the solution is below. Okay. First, my biggest tip, and I suggest you to write this down, is when you are taking or when you are practicing listening, you always take down notes. And many students will ask me how to take down notes. It depends on what level of learner you are. So if you are an advanced learner, your notes would look different from that of a beginning learner. So usually you write down the main ideas, and then you write down the supporting details. And if you can write down the specific information and final details. But if you are starting out, try to get the general ideas first, and then the major supporting ideas, and finally the details if you are at an advanced level. But you don't need to try to get the fine details in the very first try, if you are a beginning learner. I'm not sure if I included, let me check really quickly. No, I didn't include a format for notes. But let me describe to you how I would take notes. So if you were taking down notes, I suggest you to write down main ideas. And you can make different columns for this. Okay, main ideas. And if you find just getting the main idea to be really easy, then you can write down the supporting details. Oh, sorry. Okay. Apparently I cannot spell. Supporting points will be okay. Okay. And then you can have the details. So I suggest you to take notes in this format, and you can break it up into different columns. This works not only for the IELTS, but also for the TOEFL. And I know many of you are going to say right now, there is absolutely no time for me to take notes on the IELTS listening section. Why should I take notes when I'm practicing or when I'm just listening to a recording? Like the reading section, I mentioned that you have to internalize the skill. So you don't really have to use it you do have to use it on the test, but you don't need to take notes on the test because you have already internalized the skills. And taking down notes actually help you build numerous skills. First of all, it helps you to understand that there's usually a main point and then supporting details. So it gives you an overall organization of how ideas or how speeches and daily life conversations are structured. And second of all, you learn how to simplify information because there's no way you can write down every single thing when you are listening. So it helps you to focus on key points, and it also helps you to develop the ability to simplify information. And of course, when you take notes, you don't need to worry too much about the spelling. The spelling is essential when you are taking the IELTS. So if you are at an advanced level, then for the details, you can actually jot down notes and actually spell the word out if you can. Okay, so it just depends on what level you're at right now. If you're a beginning learner, then I just suggest writing down the main ideas. If you are at a more advanced level, intermediate level, then maybe the supporting points, and finally the details if you are at an advanced level. And this goes for all types of listening. And many of you will also ask me, well, how do I take notes when there are numerous speakers? Well, you can just speaker 1, speaker 2. And if you have like 4 speakers, then you can just write 4 columns and then just jot the information down in their respective columns. So you can structure your notes in this fashion. It's something that I use not only for the IELTS, but also for the TOEFL listening section. And to be honest, I don't take notes during the tests, but if I were practicing or if I were just listening to something that is not in IELTS format, then I will use this strategy to take down notes. Okay, so that's my tip for note-taking. Let me see if you have any comments, and then we'll move on to the next tip. Do you take notes for the IELTS listening section? Please write down, comment. Okay, so the next tip. Let's move on to the next tip. Okay. Read the script and learn. And I mentioned this earlier, right? So if you don't understand something, don't just flip the script right away. Try to finish the listening section first. You can examine your errors, and then you can listen again. And if you really don't understand, then I suggest you to go back to the script and circle the words and phrases that you do not understand and learn these words and phrases. Okay, so read the script and learn. And you also need to be aware of the way that they paraphrase certain speech. Perhaps you haven't encountered these phrases or structures in your classroom, but you can actually go to the script and learn new things. And many people recommend BBC website, the BBC website, or Voice of America. I actually find these websites very difficult to use, and usually the information they provide is not related to the IELTS listening section. So I will make a recommendation here. I like to use this website for information related to daily life topics. So I think it's called Cyber English Lab. Yeah, Randall's ESL Cyber Listening. So you can definitely check out this website because it has a ton of daily life conversation topics. And the website even breaks it down for you. It has an easy, medium, and difficult section. So you can definitely go through these different types of tasks, 1 a day, 2 a day, and slowly accumulate enough vocabulary words and phrases. And it's all done in context, right? So some of these things you'll never experience. For example, a rare solar eclipse. Perhaps is not directly relevant to the IELTS. Maybe for the Section 3 and Section 4, right? But many of these, for example, blood donation or business meeting, college scholarships, these are basically IELTS topics. So I highly recommend this website. It's completely free, which is quite remarkable. Randall's ESL Cyber English Lab. The web address is esl-lab.com. Okay, so check it out. Not advertising this website because it's free, but there are a variety of topics here that you can use. Okay? So please write this in the comments section. Let me check if you have written this down, and then we can move on to the next tip. Let's move on to the next part. So the first part is to take notes when practicing. The first tip is to take notes when practicing. The second tip is to read the script and learn. And the third tip, and I think it's the biggest one, is to always predict what will be said next. And how do you make predictions? I'm not asking you to take out your crystal ball and just to make wild guesses. But you know when you are taking the listening test, you will have your booklet with you, right? And I already went over the questions. But before you actually go through the listening questions, they will give you approximately, I believe, 20 to 30 seconds to read the information first. So I would read the questions and the information really quickly, and I would make educated guess. Do you have to write down your guesses? You don't need to write them down, but I usually do to help myself prepare. You don't want to write it down like right in the blank. So it actually confuses you when you are trying to transfer your answer, but you can write it to the side. And if you can't guess the word, you can guess the part of speech. So for example, express train leaves at, I know it's probably going to give me a time, so I would write time next to the blank. Or the nearest station is, perhaps it's going to give me a location, so I would write location next to the blank. You don't have to do this, but even if you don't write down the answer, I highly recommend that you predict what is going to come next. And it's pretty easy to tell you to do this when you're on Section 1 and Section 2. But Section 3 and Section 4, it becomes really difficult to make accurate predictions. Because if you don't have enough knowledge on a certain topic, background knowledge, they're not testing you on knowledge, of course, it becomes very difficult to predict the context and also the specific words. And of course, they're not testing your ability to predict correct responses, but it does help you get into the frame of mind and prepare for what will come next. So prediction, in my opinion, is necessary. Some more specific tips. You have to be really careful with singular or plural because we usually don't really care when we're listening. So if they say dog and you write down dogs, that would be considered incorrect. So you do have to pay attention to whether the noun is a singular or plural. And prediction or predicting actually helps you, because if you don't know the word, you can write down noun next to the blank. And then you know perhaps you have to be careful whether the word is a countable noun or uncountable noun, or perhaps is singular or plural. So you can pay close attention to this if you make a conscious effort to predict what the word is. I don't want you to focus too much on prediction and just spend all your time predicting every single blank, because you should go over the entire set of questions first and then try to guess if you can. Of course, I would like you to be able to make predictions fairly quickly and immediately write a word next to it, but it takes a lot of practice. Okay, so British English and American English, I mentioned this earlier. There are certain words, for example, lorry and truck, transport and transportation. So you need to be aware of these differences. And correction and changes. This is another big part on the IELTS. They always intentionally give you some information, and then they will change this information. For example, they may tell you that the train leaves at 4:05, and then the operator may say something like, "Oh, sorry, I misread that. It actually leaves at 4:15. So if they give you information, always be aware that they may give you new information later. They won't do this too far down the road. Usually a few more phrases after they give the original information. But you do have to be aware that they often make correction and changes in the listening section. Because after all, we are humans, and in daily life we make mistakes all the time. No one is perfect when he or she is speaking. You can just look at politicians if you want to see people making make mistakes when they are speaking. Okay, numbers, you have to be used to numbers being read, especially groups of number, 505, 505, okay, and especially when they're giving like ID numbers or telephone numbers. So you need to get used to writing down numbers. And the last recommendation is practice using the answer sheet. Because on the real test, of course, you will have time, 10 minutes, to transfer your responses onto the answer sheet. So you can practice, when you're doing the mock test, of course, you can practice in this way. And you can download this from the British Council's IELTS website. Okay. So I think we're ready to actually do one section, at least one section of an IELTS listening test. But let me check your comments one more time before we begin. Okay. 我今天好像忘记讲中文了，对，有同学不好意思。OK， 所以你有这个评语或问题的话，麻烦去提问一下。Okay, so let's begin. So please download this mock test if you haven't already done so. Please download this mock test. And we'll do section 1. Okay. And if you don't want to download the mock test, you can just look at the screen. But it's always good to take notes and to write some information on the margins. Okay, are you ready? So I already downloaded the clips for you. So let's listen to the first one.
Test 1. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections.
So of course you have to listen to the directions.
At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to section 1.
And as soon as he says this, you're able to turn to section 1. And you should go through the responses right away. You should go over the questions and the diagrams and the forms right away as soon as possible. And let me give you the steps that I take when I take the test. So as soon as he says you have some time to go over the questions, I'll read the questions really quickly. And then I'll try to visualize myself being in this situation. This is especially useful when you are handling math tasks or tasks related to diagrams and pictures. Why? Because if you imagine yourself as, for example, walking in the garden and the directions tells you to turn right, then you can draw a very rough map, and you can imagine yourself turning right. Because if he tells you to turn right again, then some people are confused. Is that right? Turn right, does that mean just turn to my direct right? Or does that mean I have already turned right and now I'm turning right again? So it becomes very confusing if you don't follow along the listening and you don't visualize yourself being in that situation. So for the math task, because some of you mentioned that you had difficulty with this, I recommend drawing a very rough map and pretending that you're in this situation when you are taking the test. So the first step for me is to actually put myself in this situation and to visualize. And of course, while I'm visualizing, I'm reading the questions and writing down possible responses. So these are the steps that I take. And I told you that if you cannot write down a specific word, you can write down perhaps the grammar label or the part of speech, but that's entirely up to you. Okay, so let's listen to this one. And
Section 1. You will hear a conversation between a clerk at the inquiries desk of a transport company and a man who is asking for travel information.
so what should you visualize inside your head when you hear this piece of information? Immediately, I visualize myself asking for directions, probably calling a transport company to reserve a seat. So certain words will flood to my mind. And this is exactly what you need to do. You already have some words in your mind because you already went through the questions, right? But you need to be prepared for possible words and phrases that they will use in this task. Most likely they'll give you time, they'll give you location, perhaps destinations. So these words will flood to your mind, and be prepared. And you can look at the questions as you are listening and be prepared to fill in the blanks, because the information will be given in sequence. It will follow the order of the questions. Okay, so let's listen.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
So look at questions 1 through 5. And if you finish really fast, you can even look at questions 6 to 10. And I think they give you like 20 to 30 seconds, which is a long time. So you should be writing down possible responses right now.
You will see that there is an example that has been done for you.
In the example, you can take some time to go through it, but this section is usually designed for test candidates who have never taken a mock test before, because they want to make sure that the test is fair for everyone, so they don't want question types to interfere with your performance. So they will always give you an example. But if you're already familiar with the test structure, then you can go ahead and just read the questions, even questions 6 to 10 if you want. Okay, so. But let's go through your notes. Let's go through your notes one by one. What exactly did you write down for number 1 if you were to make predictions? Express train leaves at, well, express train leaves at, it's probably going to tell me a time, right? So I would write time here. You don't need to, but of course you can't guess the specific time. Okay, no one's that good. Okay, I assume it's in the morning because it leaves at express train, but I don't know for sure. Nearest station is, I think it's going to give me the name of the station here. So I would write name. I know I probably have to use a capitalized letter. A capital letter here. I don't know what. So I probably have to spell a certain word here. Number 60 bus goes to, I figure it's going to give me a destination, a location here. Okay, perhaps another proper noun. I don't know for sure. And number 4 mentions bus goes to station. This is actually quite confusing, but if you have taken the bus before, you know that each bus typically has a number. So it's probably like 256 or 607. You don't know for sure, but you know there's a number that will be provided here. So I'll actually write a number, a pound sign here. Earlier bus leaves at. Pretty sure this is going to give me a time, and it's probably going to be sometime in the morning. Okay, so now you're fully prepared for questions 1 through 5. Shall you go on and read questions 6 through 10? It's kind of risky. If you are an advanced test candidate, yeah, you can go, but some of this information may interfere with your listening here because you're actively thinking about it. So if you're a beginning learner, I don't recommend to just go to 6 and 10 before the recording is even played for questions 1 through 5. Okay, but let's listen to questions 1 through 5, and then we'll do the other tasks later on. Okay, hold on 1 second.
On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good morning, Travel Link. How can I help you?
Good morning. I live in Bayswater and I'd like to get to Harbour City tomorrow before 11 a.m.
Well, to get to Bayswater...
No, I live in Bayswater. My destination is Harbour City.
Oh, sorry, right. So that's Bayswater to Harbour City. Are you planning to travel by bus or train?
The man wants to go to...
So even in this section, when they're giving you an example, you can still be looking at the questions. So they actually give you ample time to look through the questions thoroughly, at least in the first section. That may not be the case in sections 3 and section 4, but you will have a lot of time for the very first section. Okay, let's...
Harbour City. So, Harbour City has been written in the space. Now we shall begin.
Harbour City.
You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning, Travel Link. How can I help you?
Good morning. I live in Bayswater and I'd like to get to Harbour City tomorrow before 11 a.m.
Well, to get...
Before 11 a.m., so you're thinking about it right now. Should I film 11 a.m.? But it doesn't tell you when the express train leaves, so you haven't heard the key words yet, so be patient.
Bayswater?
No, I live in Bayswater. My destination is Harbour City.
Oh, sorry. Right, so that's Bayswater to Harbour City. Are you planning to travel by bus or train?
Okay, now you hear the key word, and now you hear train, right? So be prepared to answer question 1.
I don't mind really. Whichever option is faster, I suppose.
Well, if you catch a railway express, that'll get you there in under an hour.
Railway express. So the operator does not say express train because they will always paraphrase the information that is provided in the test booklet. So if he or she says a key word, then you can focus on this question. But be aware that they will always paraphrase the information. Okay.
Let's see. Yes, if you can make the 9:30 a.m. express, I'd recommend you do that.
9:30 a.m. express. So I know the express train leaves at 9:30 a.m. So of course you want to jot that down really quickly. And you don't have too much time, so don't go there and spell 9:30 a.m. out. Just write down 9:30 numerically really quickly.
Great. Which station does that leave from?
Helendale is the nearest train station to you.
Helendale. Okay.
Did you say Helensvale?
No, Helendale. That's Helendale.
Helendale. Helendale. I want to point out the pronunciation of N, because in Taiwan we always say N, but it's not N, it's N, and you often get it confused with M. So M and N. So please don't say N anymore. Okay.
What's the best way to get to the Helendale station then?
Well, hang on a minute while I look into that. Now, it seems to me that you have 2 options. Option 1 would be to take the 706 bus.
Oh, 706 bus, time to focus. Okay. Goes to, you know, you're looking for a location, you're listening, searching for a location.
From the Bayswater Shopping Centre to
from the Bayswater Shopping Centre to what?
Central Street.
Oh, sorry, that's my bad. I skipped over the
30 a.m. express. I'd recommend you do that.
Great. Which station does that leave from?
Helendale is the nearest train station to you.
Did you say Helensvale?
No, Helendale. That's Helendale. L-E-N-D-A-L-E.
What's the best way to get to the Helendale station then?
Well, hang on a minute while I look into that. Now, it seems to me that you have two options. Option 1 would be to take the 7:06 bus from the Bayswater Shopping Centre to Central Street.
So the answer, of course, is to Central Street, because that is the destination that the man wants to, or that's given by the operator. Okay, goes to Central Street. Many people may write down Bayswater, but she mentions Central Street. So don't be so eager to write down the information right away. Okay, you have to pay attention that they will always they'll always try to trick you in the way that they present the information. So always pay attention that they will give you new information after they give you something similar to what you expect. Okay, so let's continue on with the listening activity.
When you get there, you transfer to another bus which will take you to the station. Or, the second option, if you don't mind walking a couple of kilometres, is to go directly to Central Street and get straight on the bus going to the train station.
Straight on the bus going to the train station. So I see bus goes to the station, then I get ready for number 4.
Okay, which bus is that?
The 792 will take...
Oh, 792, you have to write down a number here. So write down 792. And remember, in the listening test, you only get one chance, right? So you have to stay completely focused.
You to the station.
I guess the walk will be good for me, so that might be the better option. What time do I catch the 792?
There are 2 buses that should get you to the station.
2 buses, and I see earlier, so I know she's going to tell me the earlier bus and the later bus. Okay.
On time. One just before 9 o'clock and one just after.
Before 9 o'clock and one just after, okay? So, is that specific enough? Well, pay attention. You know she is going to provide you with more information.
But look, at that time of the morning, it might be better to take the earlier one.
The earlier one. So now you're completely focused on number 5.
Just in case there's a traffic jam or something. The 8:55 is...
8:55. Earlier. So now you're done. And you can immediately go to questions 6 and 10 and look over the responses there. Should you take a few minutes to go through your previous responses, all the notes that you have taken? Yeah, you can. Look how messy my notes are. Okay, pretty messy. Okay, but I will have the opportunity to transfer my answer onto the answer sheet, of course. Okay, so we're not going to go over questions 6 and 10, but I have provided the answers in the description. And I highly suggest you to go over all 4 sections. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section, and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. But before we conclude our lesson for today, let's see if you have any questions. And also, please go over the script if you don't understand anything. Okay, the script is provided for you. So let's see if you have any questions, and then we can call it a night. Okay, hold on a second. And M 我到现在都还没有分得很清楚。Yes, M and N. When you say M, your mouth is closed. M, N, M, N. Definitely not N. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. Be careful with numbers. They'll love to test you on like 15 and 50, 13 and 30, or 14 and 40. They love to test you on these numbers. So make sure you can tell the difference between these numbers. Okay. Any other questions? BB, how about BBC 6-minute English? Well, yeah, all types of listening will help you. But usually for IELTS topics, I still recommend that website I showed you earlier, Cyber English Lab, because it's completely designed for students who are taking the TOEFL or the IELTS, because it includes a wide assortment of daily conversation topics. Yes, the IELTS listening does test academic topics in section 4. I know it's a general test, but occasionally you will encounter tasks on, for example, astronomy. So you do still need to have some general knowledge on basic academic topics. Okay, would you teach us to do section 4 in the listening? Perhaps another time. If you found this live stream useful, please leave a comment. Let the British Council know. Actually giving you tips from the perspective of a non-native speaker and from a test candidate. I have managed to score a perfect score on all 4 sections, as well as the TOEFL IBT. I'm not saying this to quote Donald Trump, to be braggadocious, but I'm just telling you this, that you can achieve this kind of proficiency if you study correctly, efficiently, and with guidance. Of course, you have to practice all the time. And I think the biggest tip that language instructors have for you is to be confident. Okay, but I don't think that's very specific advice, because in order to be confident, you have to have enough knowledge, enough abilities, and enough skills. And you have to be familiar with the task that you are about to do in order to be confident. So rather than just be confident, in my opinion, be prepared and be smart when you study. Okay, that is my advice for today. Okay, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.